Well, where do you want to start?
You want to say your name or where you're from?
Sure. I'm Victor, and I'm currently in Seattle. It's where I've been for like 20 years, so I guess it's my home.
Okay.
Um, should I start from the beginning of how this?
Sure, man.
Okay. So when I was younger, I was kind of a punk rocker. I was with the sort of anarchist group here in Seattle, and veganism was very strong in this group of, sort of radicals and radical thinkers. And that's when I first started experimenting with veganism, probably in the early 90s, like before there was books, before there was the internet. And we didn't even know we had to take B12, for example. Like there was just nothing out there, very little. You'd get some zines, and people would write about it, their experience in zines. That was the YouTube of the day. And I tried two different times veganism then. And both times just fell real flat on my face, tired, like no energy, just wasn't good. But I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know really anything about nutrition, and I just thought it was because I was really physically active. And fast forward, I did some bike racing. I've been like a very strong athlete in my life, and I did bike racing for a long time. And then I moved into, that's when I first started cutting out carbs, but I didn't up my fat. And I started taking a huge ton of supplements. And it actually like shortened my bike racing career because I started having like intense joint pain.
When was this?
And
When was this?
oh,
Just
when
so I
was this?
understand.
It'd be like mid 2000,
Okay.
somewhere around there. Yeah, like 2004, 5, all the way up to 11.
Yeah.
So I started going on that like no carb because that's when I first heard about sort of the idea of paleo, and I thought, oh, that's what I was doing wrong with veganism. And I was reading all of these books on how to cut weight for cycling because you have to be lean. It's just physics. You don't want to pull any more um, weight around than possible, right? So I started just eating this really protein heavy diet with tons of supplements, like no carbs, and I did like drop a lot of weight and I got really light, but then I started having like bad joint pains and then back pain, and I quit bike racing, and I started doing like some lifting, and then started doing even more supplementing because that's what you do, right? You got to do your precursors, and you have to have your muscle stack and all this garbage. And it got worse and worse. It got to the point where the inflammation in my body was so bad that I like literally had a hard time getting out of bed. I would have to like swing my legs over and then kind of do this crawl thing where it felt like I was going to throw my back out. And I was seeing the chiropractor all of the time. And I, I thought, they had suggested that I have a fusion in my lower spine because I had been hit. I'd been in an accident and been hit on my bike by a car. I just had some spinal damage there.
Hmm.
Um, and I really started developing this so I started taking a lot of ibuprofen as well to deal with the inflammation. And it just kind of like started compounding. And I hit this point where I was like, I'm going to be in a wheelchair or using a walker before I'm 50. I've got to do something. I started doing researching, of course, and that's where I found raw veganism
Oh.
and doing raw vegan flushes and cleanses. And this was about 2010, maybe into 2009. So I went full for it. I was like, I've got to do something because I can't stand this pain that I'm in and like what my body's doing. But at that time, I was also like very muscular and very lean. So my body composition was good, but my systemic inflammation was just terrible. It was terrible. And I really thought after I started reading about juice flushes and raw veganism, I was convinced it was about the heavy meat diet. that was where I was at with that. I was like, well, clearly I've eaten too much meat and I took a lot of, casein and whey and these kind of things. So I jumped all the way into raw veganism, and I've, within 2 weeks, found 30 bad. Went straight for the fruit because I knew I needed, as an athlete, the energy. I never went the high fat raw as some people do.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my inflammation went away within like 30 days because I got off all the supplements as well. Like I went 100% natural hygiene, no salts, no supplements, just natural hygiene. And yeah, to me, it was a miracle. I mean, it was the thing that like, I was like, holy crap, all of my inflammation's gone. I'm healed. I'm not going to have surgery. Everything is golden. And within, I started basically in the first of the year. Within 3 months, I was running again, and I hadn't been able to cycle or anything of that because of my knees and my joints. So I ran my first half marathon within 3 months. I ran my first marathon on June 20th, I think 2011, and I killed it. And I mean, I had that like first year experience that a lot of people have when they go high fruit raw, and I got incredibly lean, but I still had all the muscles from the previous years. Mm-hmm. And as you've mentioned before, and I see is really true, and I've mentioned this as well, these stored nutrients. People have such a good experience with the first part of fruitarianism because they're living off of all of their stored nutrients. And yeah, the first year was awesome. And because of, I was outspoken and very passionate about how it healed me and kind of my physique that came along with it, I quickly became kind of very active in the community. I had a channel back then that had a lot of subscribers. I had people constantly asking me to be a health coach and all this kind of stuff. Although I never did. I said, that's not what I do. I have this other career thing in my life. This is just a hobby. So fast forward. I will get back to this, but there were challenges just remaining there after the first couple of months where like I don't crave sugar at all or fat, and from the fruits and vegetables. And so I would like to get back to that in a little bit. But so 18 months after I first went raw vegan, high fruit, I had a period in the winter. So I was back in the winter months, and I would have this like intense pain coming down into my teeth. Like my whole mouth was just, it felt like I had been in a boxing match. Like that's what it felt like. It was just this deep ache. And then I was having a hard time sleeping, and then I just had this tooth just break open.
Oh, wow.
And I don't even know what I was eating. It was like a nut pate or something. It wasn't even anything hard, and it just cracked open. And I was crunching on it, and I was like, what is in this food? And then I was like, pulled it out, this chunk of my tooth. And I was like, what the hell? And so I've always had amazing teeth. I never had a single cavity in my entire life up to year 35. Like nothing. Like I always go in, they take x-rays, and they're like, you look awesome. See you next year, And I couldn't believe it. And then I started like going, what's going on with my teeth? And I started looking closer, and like, if you have good teeth, you don't look at them very carefully. It's not like something I brush and I do some hygiene, but never really like look too closely. Start seeing the gum lines are way up here. My teeth are looking like see-through in a couple places, and blah, blah, blah. Just problematic. Like, and I knew that pain that I was feeling, and they always tell you like this is happening or that's happening, you're detoxing, right? That's the story. Oh, you're detoxing out all that nasty animal protein or whatever. But I started getting really concerned at that point. That was the first red flag. But then once you're committed to the cause, then of course your next step is, well, I have to look into supplementation at this point, right? Because I'm not sustaining this. And then there's a lot of people who told me, water fast it out, this kind of stuff. But instead I got a complete osteoporosis supplement. And the first one I didn't even know wasn't vegan, and I took it and everything was fine. And then I looked at it closer and I was like, oh, that's from animal bone. So that's why it's working. And then I got this really expensive raw vegan one that came in 2 parts, and you had to take like 8 of these a day, and then you had to take 4 of those a day. So it was like 12 pills a day, and it was like 20 days worth for like $45. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And that didn't actually work that well. So then I had some ongoing, like, not feeling that great. I went and had blood work done at that point. My TSH levels were super high. My triglycerides were super high. And mind you, I'm running like anywhere from 60 to 85 miles a week. So heavily active, not just like being sedentary and seeing a triglyceride spike from lack of activity. I was that active, and my triglycerides were, I don't know, I have the paperwork somewhere, but they were unusually high, and my doctor was like, what are you doing? And stop eating it. And I'm like, I'm eating so healthy. What do you mean? I'm just eating like a natural diet, just like fruits, veg, and this kind of stuff. The other thing that started happening to me, and I talked about this very publicly, was that I would just get all of these cold sores. And, I have them on the mouth, the herpes. And I had them when I was a kid, but as an adult, I would only ever have them if maybe I got sick and my immune system was down, then maybe I'd get some. And I started having this, like, I'd go for a run, like a 12-mile run, not that far. At that time, for me, it wasn't that far because I was doing 20, 30 miles at a time. Mm-hmm. And then I'd get back to home, and almost immediately, I would just get this cold sore, and it would just pow. And I knew something was going on there too. Like, my immune system was not suppressing the virus. The virus kept erupting. And the virus uses the spinal column to travel, to make lesions. So I can only assume that I wasn't eating enough fat to keep my immune system and my spinal, because they say when your neurons in your spinal column gets unhealthy, that it's easier for the virus to come up and make lesions. But I don't know a lot about that science. I haven't done a lot of reading on it, but I knew it was a problem. Like, I could see that as a symptom. Like, this is uncommon. And then my partner, who was also doing this, started getting the colitis in the corners of the mouth that you always see on raw vegans and in vegans. But so at that point I said, well, this raw veganism isn't working that well for me. I live in a north environment. I don't get a lot of vitamin D. Maybe I just need to switch to cooked vegan. Mm-hmm. So then that's the progressive, like cooked vegan, high raw, still like, oh yeah, I'm fruit-based. I just have this cooked stuff, and I'm getting cooked stuff with supplements put into the food because I'm just like desperately trying to keep the system running. And I did that for about 3 years. And during that time, I started off, the progression, you go high fruit, raw, and then high starch, low fat, and then slowly you'll see people slipping into like meat analogs, until that's all you're eating. I'm just eating like these fake meat products till you just break down one day and you're like, I can't do this anymore. But that's kind of how it went. And for 3 years, I did that while I was trying to lift pretty seriously. Like, I wanted to show vegan strength, because that's what people want to prove. And in the third year, and I had some more bad blood work during that time. I've actually reposted a video about that. I got a blood work back with very high cholesterol for eating no animal products. And same thing, my doctor's like, what are you eating? Like, I've never, I've had the same doctor for a long time. He's like, I've never seen your blood work like this. What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just eating a vegan diet, but you start mixing the starches with the fats, with the meat analogs, are just tons of oils in those too, fractured oil, and it just spiked my blood work. And then in the last year, and I typed to you about this, I started getting bloody noses.
Right.
And I went to my doctor about it, and he was like, well, people get bloody noses. And I was like, no, I'm getting regular bloody noses. That's not normal. And he's like, well, you're powerlifting, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, you probably just burst something in your nose. And he took a look at my nose, and there was like some ruptured blood vessels, so like weak connective tissue or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. He's like, it'll be fine. Give it a couple weeks. And he said, if it doesn't go away, we'll cauterize it. We'll go in and we'll cauterize. And I kept getting more and more bloody noses as the time went on. And I had one day where I had 4 bloody noses in a day. And I was like, I'm done. This is not normal. This is wrong. Like, and I have to stop playing this denial game. And you start thinking back to the first symptoms, your first cracked tooth, and then how you've been putting Band-Aids on all the way along. And that day I went to the store and I got duck eggs and milk and cheese, and I just started off vegetarian. And I went home and I had so many eggs. Like, I think I had a dozen eggs that day. And I just blew, like, I felt like I was just vibrating. I was like, whoa. Like, I just felt like so energized, and like I hadn't felt in years. And I was like, okay, we have to come to terms with this. And it's a psychological process, because you've bought into veganism, you've bought into this whole thing, and you've helped others get into it, and you've like, now what? So that's kind of where it was. And I had even, when I was running so many marathons and ultras, I was friends with Mike Arnstein, who really helped get me into fruitarianism. We were actually friends, and we were writing a book together. And, I have a background in biological sciences, so you start putting together all of the peer-reviewed science that supports your ideology. And I mean, we spent, I don't know, almost a year and a half writing this book, and it's pretty much done. And my part was done. I was just kind of doing the background research and helping him put together. But he decided to shelve the project, and he ultimately, I think, felt that he didn't want the responsibility that came along with it. Mm-hmm. Whatever that means, whether it's peddling and selling, or, dealing with people who are contacting, asking questions or having problems, kind of thing. But I also found out along the way, like, how many, like, a lot of people contacted me off the record because they knew that I have a background in science, and they were contacting me with problems. And that was the other thing that I couldn't deny. The whole time along the way, like, how many people contacted me with issues and wanted me to try to help them, like, sort it out, or tell them what kind of supplement they could take, or what they need to eat more of that's going to have X, Y, and Z. And they're like listing all of these symptoms. And like every week I was getting, like, when I was really active on YouTube, I spent hours and hours every week, like, trying to help people and answer questions. And during that time, I learned about how many of these, raw guru people are eating fish and fish oil and like raw milk and all this other kind of crap off the side. And they're not saying that they're still raw because they're eating whatever raw things off to the side, sashimi once in a while, or, a little bit of raw yogurt or this sort of thing. and they're not sustaining the raw veganism, but they're selling the raw veganism. And it's just to me, it's a bunch of people who are lying to themselves. Like, I look at it now and it's like, you're not presenting the truth. You're not presenting what is actually going on. You're presenting some polished up crap, and you're dragging people into something incredibly dangerous for most humans. There's, without question, will probably be a few people out there that might have some genetic exceptions that make them better at surviving long periods without, animal products. But that's an anomaly. That's a small percentage versus the majority. So that was kind of the wrap up. And then I, for a long time, even when I came back to animal products, was kind of trying to do this like, wow, I'm still like plant-based, but I use animal products as a supplement, is to like supplement the things instead of using supplements. And then I got really like anti-supplement. I'm still very anti-supplement. I'm completely off supplements. And I thought that coming back on animal products was going to reintroduce the inflammation that I was feeling before I went raw vegan. I haven't had any inflammation at all. And right now I'm incredibly high meat, high animal products. And I'm kind of surprised because you don't know where those things are coming from. People just kind of make it up in their minds. It's subjective. Oh, it's all this animal products that's giving me inflammation. But when you start eating a really clean, full nutrient spectrum diet, and you're not on the supplements, it hasn't been a problem for me. And as I learned with biochemistry, I don't know about in Europe, but in the United States, we don't have any oversight in the supplement industry. We don't have any government going in and checking what's going on with supplements. And it's very dangerous because they've done independent testing on the supplements and found heavy metals, like they found DNA from things that weren't even on the ingredient list. And I try to explain to people that we have receptors in our body, and they are very specific about what they take in. And molecules are, left and right hand, and the receptors want a very specific geometric thing. So you can imagine like your right hand in a left glove works for shit.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like that in our receptors. And when we do, when we do medicines, they do a very specific right or left hand based on the receptors, and they know, and there's oversight in that, and they filter out the mixed up left and right hand molecules so that there's only the type of molecule that should go into the receptors. Supposedly, you get like 99% pure. They don't do that with supplements. So you could be having like weird molecules that are similar to the receptors but don't work right, and they will just go in there, connect, and just cause havoc. Like, that's not how the biochemistry works.
Exactly.
And once I started learning that in school, I was like, oh no, supplements are so bad. I mean, they might be, if you were in a really dire, like close to death situation, they might help for a short period just to kind of stabilize you. But then you need to like get away from that, But I would say for every, in any situation, like the food, the thing that you're supposed to be eating is the better choice, It's always the better option. And since I've been off with supplements, every kind, I've been so much better. So since then, kind of going with that like high plant-based, a little bit of animal food, I've just kind of found myself listening to what my body wants over like all this back and forth garbage, in the media and the internet, and just trying to like listen. And I've been slowly moving more and more towards heavy carnivorism and less no grains, no beans. Like, it took me a while to get off all of the starches, and still eating some, greens and a little bit of fruit, but it's very different for me now, and I feel so much better, and I look better, and I'm functioning better. Haven't had bloody noses. My athletic performance is through the roof. And that's kind of how I started just kind of still exploring and reading more and more about all these kind of like dietary myths, and that's kind of how I ran into your channel.
Mm.
I'm trying to think if there was anything else along the way. I don't know. That's about the synopsis of it. That's kind of been the path, and that was so I was vegan, strict vegan for 5 years, and then
2010 to 2015.
yeah, yeah, with all the experimentation, um, 10 years total, off and on in my life.
Okay.
And then I've been back on animal products for 2 years, but the last 6 months I've been very heavy. And then I've been slowly progressing into more ketogenic, um, because I feel better on fat. And like I tried to like hear all this stuff about carbohydrates, like your body runs on it, your brain runs on it, and all this kind of stuff. But I would just be up and down all day long. So I would eat this, starch meal or even starch with some protein and then like, get this spike and then, and I was drinking a lot of, that was the other thing, because my energy levels were so down or up and down, like I ended up drinking a lot of caffeine. And I've heard that from other vegans too. Like I've heard some people saying they're drinking up to 30 cups of coffee a day,
Mm-hmm.
which is like insane because your body's just dying. And I don't have that now. Like I've been doing some intermittent fasting, and I don't do it every day, but I do it just based on how I feel. Like if I don't feel like eating, I don't press myself to. And with more, and I'm not 100% keto. Like I eat some fruits, and I kind of go up and down. But with lifting, I kind of try to make sure I'm having some sugars because I want to get the mass. I want to put on some more mass. Um, but I just don't feel that. I just feel so even. It's amazing. And yesterday, so I've been just starting to incorporate some raw meats, which is something that, of course, I was terrified about.
Mm-hmm.
Totally terrified, because of that whole belief system. But then I started looking back through traditional meals and thinking about like how humans have come so long, and raw meats have been traditional meals forever. And so I started off with some tartars, some oysters, some raw seafood, and it's been like I can feel it going to that next level. Yesterday I did I had come off a day of all raw meat, seafood, tartars. I did have some blue rare steak and some greens and a pear, but essentially very raw meat day. And I had to do a bench test because I'm going into a training cycle for a powerlifting competition. And I blew my personal best bench by 20 pounds, which is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really huge jump. And there's nothing that's changed. And I had been in a car accident this year, and I had to take some time off of some lifting because had whiplash. And so hadn't even been working out for like 3 weeks. And then I had oral surgery to remove all the teeth. So I had to have this year 9 cavities filled and 3 teeth removed, left over from veganism. I tried to see if I could heal them, but they were too far gone. The 3 teeth, and then I had the 9 fillings. So now we'll see what happens. But can you imagine 3 teeth gone and 9 fillings? And this is a person who never had dental issues ever in my life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I came in, that lift yesterday, 20 pounds, and I was like, it was just mind-boggling to me. So I feel like the more I know, the less I know. That's definitely where I feel that I'm at this point. So that's my story.
When were these 10 years exactly, just to make it clear, when you were vegan?
So the early days when I was kind of doing the experimenting, but I never kept on it. So I'd go like 8 months or then a year, and then I would break down and go back. So that was in the early 90s, early mid 90s. I think I tried it like 3 times, 2 times real seriously. And then the last stint was a full 5-year block.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know any other vegans who were friends and now also quit or something like that? Many.
Oh, so many,
Yeah.
so many, so many. And I'm talking some of the most die-hard friends of mine from the early like Seattle anarchist scene who were so die-hard. And like people who are anarchists are very convicted and passionate about what they're doing. And you're talking about people who'd be out marching, maybe some people I know who are in animal liberation front kind of thing,
Mm.
they're not vegan anymore. And how many people from the 30 bad days, like the early 30 bad days, we talk all the time. We, on the side, and there's just like easily half the people. It's a revolving door. That's what I say. It's a revolving door, and they have to have that revolving door because nobody sticks to it. Very few people do. And the ones that do, you watch them just go down, 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 having to do Botox or, do certain camera angles and like only in certain light because they look so terrible. And then if they do, they're like, oh, I'm fasting because they have to fast to like deal with all the weight that they're gaining. And it's a wrap. It's just unbelievable. And I mean, I hope the people that need to find the recovery, and that's why I'm kind of committed to continuing on and continuing to speak about my experiences with others, that when people come through the other side and they need the recovery, that they can find the resources that they need. Yeah.
Mm.
So,
What do you think is the
um,
future of veganism? Or say what you want to say.
the future of veganism. Oh, well, sadly, I think that they will cling on to lab-grown meat. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people have so many problems, and then they'll say, well, this lab-grown meat is our ultimate ethical choice. And then it'll eventually go to that. And there will always be people who will be in denial and will let their health just go to shit over their ideologies. And I've seen that. But I always say, like, hey, if that's your belief system and that's what you choose, that's fine. But be very clear about your experience, that you choose your philosophy over your personal well-being.
Mm-hmm. So why?
And that's fine if that's what you want to do. If you want to say, yeah, maybe I'm not going to be as healthy. I had one guy tell me very straightforward. He said, yeah, I probably could be healthier if I ate animal products, but I'm just not willing to do that. Okay, fine. Cool. But don't try to sell it as your health, some health-saving diet, because it's not. It might be a good thing for people who are really obese to do for a quick, short while, just to like change their eating and get used to moving into a healthier eating system. Sure, it's helped people in a very short term, sort of way, but it's not going to last. I think the average time that people do well on veganism, depending on stored nutrients, is a year to 3. And then normally I've seen with people who are very convicted, they try to like drag it out to 5 to 7 years before they collapse in. And the only ones that I see doing really well long term tend to be on, and I would say really well, as far as like a vegan goes, really well, are on very heavy supplementation. Or they're doing things on the background that they're not talking about, which I find incredibly disreputable. Taking a little fish oil here, doing a little this, that here, but not talking about it. There's a number of so-called vegans that are taking heavy fish oil on the side and stuff like that. So.
Why do those people do it for so long? Why do they not quit if their health suffers? And why did you do it for 10 years? Was it because of the animals?
Well, for me, it was really largely about the environment and as a protest against modern farming. So I grew up on a farm, and I know how farm animals are treated. I know how they act. I've milked. I grew up drinking full cream milk right out of the cow. Delicious, by the way. um, and I am very against industrial farming. So for me, and it's difficult where I'm at here, I've now just finally sourced a really good family farm that I'm working with. But it can be very difficult in the United States to find good quality animal products. I mean, they are feeding a new trend in the United States is to take candy like Skittles and Snickers and candy bars and candies that are outdated, and the farmers buy them in bulk. So it's like past due, and it's all this garbage with chemicals and colors and all this crap, fake oils, trans fatty acids, and they buy it in bulk from these candy places because it's cheap as hell, and they feed it to the animals. They mix it, they cut the feed with it, and because it makes their production dollars, their bottom line bigger. And that's what people are eating from the stores in the United States, and that's part of the reason why we have so many chronic health issues here. Is like the quality of food is shit, and it's very difficult to find good quality food here. And that's why I have start my own food forest to grow my own foods. But I don't have enough land here to do animals. I only have 1 acre, so maybe I could do some chickens. I've been thinking about that. And I've picked up hunting and fishing to supplement. But I finally found a good farm here to work with, and I'm really excited about that. But yeah, for me, it was a bit of protest, both environmentally and just consumer-wise. Like, I don't want to support that industry. And environmentally here, the farms, the government doesn't make the industrial farms keep the environment clean. So they're dumping all this shit into the ecosystems, and it's destroying our country here. The wildlife, the oceans, the rivers, and I find that very upsetting. So for me, it was really it started as environmentalism, but then as I got more into it, I started having if we don't have to treat animals and eat them, then better, if we can live on plants, better. But I never had to me, I never felt that eating an animal was unnatural or went against our biology. So I didn't have the animal rights focus that some people have, but maybe just in the sense of industrial farming, which I don't agree with and still do not.
Right.
So, yeah.